Hello everybody, my name is Sam Gregory and welcome back to another one of these Fotospeed videos about printing your photos from home. Now in this particular video we're going to talk about this image of mine, which is a sort of very textured woodland scene, although slightly different I suppose to a normal one, and we're going to look at that on two different papers, the Legacy Gloss 325, which is the one closest to me, and the Platinum Baryta, which is over here on my left hand side as you look. Now before we get into that, I would just like to say if you enjoy the videos and you want to know more and you want to keep up with everything we've got going on, do hit that subscribe button, okay, and you'll get the Fotospeed videos as soon as they are out if you hit the notifications bell as well. We really appreciate your support. Now in this particular image there are various reasons why I wanted to choose it, and I'm going to talk about that and the papers in a little bit more detail, and then we're going to look at the image on the computer, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about preparing that for print and how I did it on these two particular papers. Now just as we get into that little next bit of the video, I wanted to talk about these papers because for black and white printing, I reckon these two offer a really serious combination. Depending on the type of image that you have, I reckon one of these two would be the answer more often than not. Now the Platinum Baryta over here, this one, has been around for a good number of years and is very popular, I know, with photographers. It's sort of a luster, semi-luster sort of feel to it, but it's not glossy in any way. And so I think a lot of people who generally prefer matte papers, certainly on colour images, but want something a little bit punchier maybe for black and white, do like the Baryta. But in 2018, the Legacy Gloss, which is this one closest to me, came along as the sort of brother of the Platinum Cotton 305. Now I appreciate I'm throwing a load of names around at you, but all you need to really remember is that the Platinum Cotton 305 and this Legacy Gloss I have here next to me are both 100% cotton, acid and OBA free. Now it's really important that the OBA free bit is the thing we talk about. OBAs are optical brightening agents and lots of papers have OBAs in them. It's what helps give the paper a kind of really clean white look. However, over a period of many years, those OBAs can degrade. They're just chemicals within the surface of the paper, and that can lead to a slight colour cast change in the print. And so alongside leading photographers, Fotospeed developed in 2018 this OBA-free range, which includes the Legacy Gloss here I've got next to me, and the Platinum Cotton, which I've done a separate video about, which you can check out with a colour image on the Fotospeed channel in due course as well. So today, after all of that explanation, I will get on with it. I know you guys want to see the papers and how they differ, and I'm going to walk you through the image on the screen, a little bit about the prep of the file, get them printed, compare them both with close-ups, and then give you my opinions about how they vary and what they both might be suited to as well. So without any further ado, let's get into it.
Okay, so here's our image in the Lightroom Develop module, and I'm not going to spend long talking about the image per se, just a couple of things I wanted to point out. So first things first, I've mentioned this on a couple of other videos, always just be mindful of your background colour in Lightroom or Photoshop because it can be slightly misleading. So for example, if we put darker grey as the background colour, this suddenly feels very bright and white up here in the sky, when actually if we look at it with white background, we can see that, you know, it is actually a sort of slight soft grey. So that's just one little thing to be aware of when you're editing images, especially if there's very light or very dark areas. Just double check it with a couple of different background colours to see really what's going on there. And you can just right click and click that to change it how you want it. Now in terms of the print and what we're doing today with comparing the two different papers, I just want to point out one little thing. Usually obviously we're always taught, aren't we, not to have anything highlighted here in our histogram where it shows us we're sort of blocking things out or losing details in the highlights. Honestly, there are times, quite a lot, where images I have are blocking out in the blacks, but very rarely the highlights, because that is just gone, if you see what I mean. Whereas the blacks, I generally find the printing, you can cope with that. And actually, when you come to look at the soft proof, which you should always do really when you're doing your printing, what I'm looking at here is to see if we've got any problems with the custom profile for the paper that I'm going to print on. And actually you can see here that the blacks that we're sort of clipping down here on the generic histogram are not showing as a problem on the actual print histogram using this profile simulation. And if I check that on the Gloss Art Fiber, similar thing, it's not really having any sort of problem down here in this lower area. Now I wouldn't really mind if it did, because that is black and it is dark and I've got no problem with it being dark. But just an interesting point that the histogram on your develop module and the histogram on the soft proofing will show slightly different things depending on the paper that you've selected and the profile, and therefore you might actually be okay with things that look like they're clipping slightly. Now again, I picked this image just because of the huge amounts of sort of texture in it. I wanted to see how that detail came out, and the fact that obviously we have some very dark and very bright areas. I feel like that's probably going to be better suited to the Baryta. I think the Legacy Gloss maybe is for images which are a little bit more subtle and have different sort of gradations within them, not just whiter areas and darker areas per se, but we'll see how we get on in the print. So all I'm going to do is just take us over to the print module. I've got this already set up with the correct cell size and the print resolution, etc. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to use the custom profiles that have been made for the papers, but we just simply have to choose our correct profile, and I'm going to print these two out, and then we'll take a closer look at them and I'll give you some of my thoughts about how the two papers have coped with this type of image.
Okay, so we've printed the images out, and I've tried to show you with a couple of the close-ups there some of the differences in the texture of the surface and indeed the sort of cast or the colour of the base papers as well. Really difficult, and I hope you guys appreciate that. I do my best with the close-ups and the lighting, but it's really difficult then with the video grading, how you watch it, what your screen is like, etc, etc. So I'll try and just articulate some of that for you as well and my feelings about it. First things first, the Legacy Gloss is definitely warmer. It's got a warmer feel to the paper, just that, you know, you can tell even before you print on it that it's a little bit of a warmer paper. And that's simply because it doesn't have those OBAs basically, and it's 100% cotton base as well. Now, at the outset, that will mean when you look at these two back to back, suddenly the Legacy Gloss does feel quite warm, a bit more like an old sort of darkroom print. And the Platinum Baryta feels quite cold, really quite a nice crisp sort of coldness to the image, if you will. Now, in this particular instance, my initial reaction, seeing them come off the printer, is that I do prefer the Platinum Baryta. Now, that's just a personal opinion on this particular image and on how I like my black and whites to look. I prefer them generally to be a little colder in the final print. And when I say colder, I mean obviously the white balance and the general overall hue and the cast, as it were, is a little on that bluer, colder side of things. However, I think depending on the image you're going for, this slight warmth could look really, really beautiful. Maybe in an image that has some more gradation in the shadow areas, more of a classic filmic kind of black and white look, I would imagine, would come out really, really nice on the Legacy Gloss. And I'm going to go away and do a little bit more testing on different types of images to see if I can find the right kind of thing that just perfectly suits it, for me anyway. I would say that both of them retain a great deal of cleanliness in the details of the image, and also in these areas where there's no physical things. Obviously we're just looking kind of at the sky there. I would say that the Baryta has a neater, tighter sort of grain to it, if you will. That's not quite the right phrase, but I think you all know what I mean. It's a very repetitive, small dot kind of grain across it, whereas the Legacy Gloss has more of a feel of a textured matte paper in a way, in that it's a little bit less repetitive over its grained areas. I do hope you know what I'm talking about there. I think it's something you only really notice when you stare right up close at it. So I think in summary, I am pretty impressed with how it handles the detail. And actually, I think that warmth, that slight warmth, it's not super warm, but a slight warmth, could come in really handy if you get the right image with it. If you prefer your images a little bit colder and sort of cleaner, then I think the Baryta might be more up your street. However, the huge kicker in all of this, and the huge benefit to both the Legacy Gloss and its sort of brother, the Platinum Cotton 305, is that what I see here now is what's going to be the same in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and so on years. This paper will not change because it is OBA free, as mentioned earlier. So that print, from an archival point of view, assuming I store it correctly, will last and last and last and last. And there is something to be said for that. Whereas the Baryta, obviously it's a great paper, but under lights over a number of decades, we are talking that probably, it will slightly change because there is a little bit of OBAs in there. And obviously, how much of an issue is that for you? That's the question you have to ask yourself. But all in all, both super papers for black and white. They can both do colour really nicely as well, but I think personally, black and white is probably the home for both of these two papers. Now, I hope you found that interesting. As I've mentioned, I've done another video about the Platinum Cotton versus the NST Bright White, and that's a colour image, so you might want to check that out on the Fotospeed channel as well. As ever, stay subscribed for new videos coming out. There's stuff coming every week. And if you have any questions or any to-do videos you'd like us to take a look at, or me to take a look at in particular, just drop them in the comments and we'll see what we can do for you on that. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I shall speak to you all again very soon.